Hey, podcasting family. This is Scott Carson from the Austin Podcast Association, and I'm excited to introduce you to the newest personality, one of the newest podcasters in the Austin Podcasters Meetup group out here. And we're so honored to have such a variety of unique individuals, unique stories, unique podcasts. And I totally encourage you, if you're not a part of the group, hey, come out and join us on the third Wednesday of every month and really come network with your fellow podcasters. And so we're really excited to have Tandy Gutierrez join us here on this episode. And Tandy is just a unique, she's the founder and creator of unicornwellnessstudio.com. She's the host of the Magic Spark podcast. So make sure you check it out. We'll have the link below in the description. She's also a Master Pilates Instructor, intuitive Psychic Tarot reader, trauma-informer, mentor, coach, and author, living an autoimmune body. Her 20 years plus of experience, 20 plus years, ladies and gentlemen, in the fitness and wellness industry have taken her from corporate life, celebrity and elite clientele to first to market online content creator. She helps people heal their core wounds and live a life by design rather than a life by default through practical and magical self-care. Her focus in all things are healing, equity, balance, and authentic soul expression for herself. And it's called to work with her. And so we're honored to have Tandy join us. How's it going today, Tandy?
I am so delighted to be here. So thank you. And it's great. And it's also like nutty. Like this week is just nutty. So
yeah, it's definitely interesting week out there. The world is an interesting place out there for you. So let's talk a little about your podcast. But before we do so, let's talk leading up to first of all, how long have you been podcasting or been a content creator for?
I've been a content creator for 10 years now, like before it was the cool thing to do. And the podcast will be a year old, March 23rd of 2023. So I'm a baby podcaster still.
Well, but you're doing it and you've been around about a year and you've gotten quite a few episodes. What led to you deciding to start the podcast?
Truth be told, I was at a place in my life and in my career. I was feeling things were very noisy online. My content creator, clearly, career started with Facebook many, many, many years ago. So I've been in the public eye for a very long time and watched it go from a really fun viral space to very busy, very noisy, very technique. It's just changed a lot, and it can be so beautiful and wonderful. But I was feeling very disconnected from my heart and from the core of my work and from just really loving everything I was producing, right? Like you have a side hustle, you've got a job, and then it's a hobby and your heart's all sparkly, and then it turns into a career and work. And I'm still on board with all of that, but I just wanted a place to have a longer conversation with people instead of it being a short sound bite or this very polarized, like, I'm just going to drop a comment and go, or just not feeling like I got to say or help teach or hold space or listen in a way that I really wanted to. So the podcast was a heart project to reignite my creativity and my connection to creating. And I kept it real quiet and real like in the corner for a year to see if I was still that connected to it down the road, and was really trying not to make it a part of the business or another thing.
Yeah, so that's unique. You try to keep it separate. Now, how is that intertwined? Before we get into how it's entwined a little bit, let's talk about your business, because you're doing a lot of things.
Yeah,
but they're all very connected. So let's talk about, because you've been a content creator for quite a while. Let's talk about what led into being a content creator, and then we can kind of go a little bit more down that rabbit hole.
So I was a celebrity fitness trainer. I had very high-end clientele. I worked for a large corporation that everybody would understand and hear. I was their first regional Pilates manager. I ran their studios. I had 8 locations when we were in LA. Like, I had a career that was very sought after, that I loved, that I enjoyed. But I got to a place with my personal health that being on task and in a building that was that driven for 60 to 80 hours a week, which was the reality of it, was just not serving me. I had thyroid issues that were just accelerating, and it was, I had given birth. By the time we had launched an online offering, I'd given birth to 2 baby boys, and that work-life balance, not just for moms, but for any parent, is really intense, and I wanted to be very hands-on and very present. You can't have it all. That's just a lie, but you can balance and you can trade, and have a little bit more of what you want, particularly as an entrepreneur. So I was at a place after I'd given birth to our second son of like, do I go back? Do I stay home? I've done one of everything. I still have more to give, but that schedule is just not working in all the ways. And so we're very creative in our house, and we're like, okay, creative solution. What could we possibly do? My husband comes from the tech industry and was very familiar with online subscription-based sites at that time. And he was like, you are primed for this. And I was like, wait, what? I have a theater background and I have perfectionist nature.
Yeah.
I worked for some high visibility, productions. And I thought, what? Like, I don't get the whole 2.0 thing. And he was like, we're going to get you a camera. So it was really his idea. And he was like, I've watched you. You produce content like literally every day of your life as you're teaching, as you're connecting with people. And he was like, you're such a host, you're such a performer. And I was like, yes, I am. Hey, Leo rising. And I thought, okay. And we were at a place in our life where we could invest a little bit, and it wasn't a big deal. It wouldn't have been a loss, that there was some privilege in being able to take this leap to see how it would work. And so we did it. It was not like a gangbusters thing out the door, that's for sure. We started with a fitness offering. That was the mainstay of my career. That was the visibility. This is at a time and place when direct TV and exercise TV had gone away. And I had an audience that I thought, well, maybe they'll come with me over here, right? And so we launched it simply as a fitness offering. It then evolved as I evolved, of course, to offer a food component of cracking your own food code. This again was at the beginning stages of the paleo movement. We were learning more. I have autoimmune issues. I never intended to share it with my audience or my clients, but they were like, what are you doing? Because clearly this is working for you in a health capacity. And then I had a catharsis, and I was totally in the witch's closet and practicing tarot, using it with private clients, and just thought I cannot be separated anymore. And we then transitioned one more time for a full wellness practice of meditation, of Reiki healing, of the astrology and the tarot. So it's evolved in 10 years period of time, never intended for it to be 10 years old. And it's been quite an adventure.
Just a little bit. How did that transition go from that, and how soon? And you may still be working full time, but how much did that transition go from working that corporate job to? Are you still doing that to leave into has your subscription model kind of help replace that for you? And
oh yeah, no, we literally launched our original offering in 2013. I never returned to my corporate job.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so awesome.
Yeah. And it was totally in a period of time that people were like, what the fuck are you doing? Because I had a notable career, right? It was a desirable career and I loved it. And I love the people that I worked with. It's just the intensity of the scheduling just wasn't a fit anymore.
It totally sounds like you had a lot of inner turmoil when you're teaching, speaking in one direction, but the hours and the commitment and the dedication to it doesn't match up with the two in a lot of cases. Right?
Yeah, I just am a sensitive body. That's literal, like with all the autoimmune stuff. And it takes me longer to recover from things energetically. And it just wasn't tenable. So it was like by the time I was working, then I would end up sick, or I'd have a flare up, or I'd be gluten somewhere because I was out at an event. It just literally wasn't working. And so this life by design, right, that I teach to and say is part of my mission is really true. Like I walk my talk, and I've done it from the beginning. I will take the risks and I will turn things down. I certainly have. Things have gone sideways on a project where I'm like, yeah, that's not going to happen because it's not in alignment with the ecosystem. And yeah, I mean, I really feel like most people are so busy and that they're living a life by default. They're just kind of engaging with the things as they come. And that's real and it's earnest. And there's no shade, no shame in that game because it's really real. And yet I think so many of us get to a certain age and stage and go, I don't want to do this anymore. Right. There's gotta be a different way. There really is. Like, I'm living proof. There's so many now that are living proof. And people just need to, one, you need to see that somebody's gone before you. This is one of the things that I struggled with. Nobody was doing what we were doing at that period of time. They thought I was crazy. I was giving up a career and visibility and like all the accolades and the stuff. And yeah, I thought maybe I am a little crazy. And that was the trip up for me and for us. Nobody was doing it. We built our first platform. So, we had a developer. We were like, this button should go there. It should function like this. This has to flow into this. So like, it didn't exist to have a plug and play to just drop or upload content and have it have a template and a form. And that was, for me at this point now, that's what I hope to be to other people also, is a template to go the weird way, to go, how does she put Pilates and meditation and tarot and astrology and coaching, but it all works.
Well, but the beautiful thing about it is they all tie in some form or fashion in the wellness side of that stuff, the mindset and the coaching. You really, anybody who wants to succeed in things needs a coach. Right?
Yeah.
Or you have the hard knock 6 months to figure things out. Nobody wants to wait 6 months for success.
No.
The patience is, we want to go from 0 to 60 in 6 weeks, maybe 6 days to get on the right track versus trying to figure out and, fail forward and it take things 6 months, and what's amazing is you're doing this well before like lead pages or ClickFunnels or Kajabi or any of that stuff.
Totally. Yeah. I was teaching courses in email. Like 30-day challenges and 30-day courses, like in email, and then trying to figure out these like wacky fixes of like, how do we, you have a private YouTube channel, so then we can link them to that and leak them one at a time so they're not on the other channel. Like, I think that for me, like on a personal note, it's really in this transition of, I don't have to fail forward so much anymore. We don't have to create things. I think for me, I actually have to work backwards a little bit. And yet, having a business that has maintained, sustained, and grown in 10 years, you can have all the doodads, widgets, and platforms, and you can't make $1. You need a coach or a mentor. And so it's tricky because everybody's like, why don't you coach entrepreneurs? Like, because everyone's path is so unique. If the entrepreneurs come to me, if we bolster and uncover and empower your authentic self and your authentic voice, the other shit's gonna come along. Yeah.
It's so true. Well, that's the thing, is we get so bogged down into the newest plugin or the newest tool or the tech, or app. I'm a big believer in the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid. You know what I mean? And that's very, very similar past how I started doing virtual workshops 6 years ago before COVID made it popular, and so it's, we have a lot of that similarities, which is great. So you're coming along, and suddenly I'm going to start a podcast. You know what I mean? Let's talk about that kind of transition, because I assume you're doing well. And you're like, I'm creating content.
Yeah.
What made you said, okay, I'm going to do a podcast?
I just wanted to connect with people more deeply again. I just wanted to have long conversations. And I know that's not very popular either, always in podcasting. Like, we know that the 20-minute is like the most consumable, but that's not my audience. Right. And to be really fair and really earnest as well, of like, yes, it is benevolent. It totally is. I just wanted to talk to people. I meet fascinating people. I think that people are healers and mentors in all kinds of ways, simply by hearing their stories. I was also really frustrated with Instagram, which is my boo. I'm not leaving, but there have been so many scam accounts in the last 2 years that it's really exhausting to be a coach, a mentor, a healer, an influencer, a content creator over there. And in particularly in my lane of particularly in my lane. And so I was looking for, earnestly as a business, another way to connect with people to draw them in, knowing that for my particular audience, if they're one, interested in the topics that I'm discussing, two, they're willing to have the long conversation and listen to that long conversation, they've been vetted, they trust me, they're interested, they've had time to get to know me, my voice, what I'm sharing with them, the tips and the tactics and the approach, that when they're ready for a movement practice, a wellness practice, a coach or a mentor, I'm right there.
Yep. Well, you've built, that's the thing. I love it when you said you think that 20 minutes are the ideal podcast length. I think the ideal podcast length is however long each episode needs to be. If you're in the middle of a good conversation, I've had podcast episodes go longer an hour. If you're dealing with a horrible guest, you don't want to be in an hour conversation with that.
Totally.
Let's get to the point and nip it in the bud and move from there. But that's the thing, though, is having longer conversations is you don't put that idea in a box where you're limited by your constraints of 30 minutes or 20 minutes. So many people rush that and you lose out on great nuggets, great questions that pop up. And that's the thing when I'm interviewing somebody, if a question pops in my head or something pops up from what the guest says, I know that my listeners out there are thinking the same thing.
Totally.
You got to ask the question, because then if you don't, you're doing your listeners, your followers a disservice. And by asking that question, like, aha, she was thinking like I was thinking. And that builds that rapport and that camaraderie before you even meet in person or talk on the phone the first time, right?
Absolutely. And, the hallmark of my career since we launched Unicorn Wellness Studio is that people really feel familiar and like they personally know me. And I know that we do feel like that about a lot of people that we see online or that we follow. And I think that's the good part, right? Of like people are sharing their lives. There is also like the highlight reel of it, but I don't think there's a whole lot of space to hide in a podcast.
No, if you do, your audience can tell.
Yeah.
Whether it's video or audio. Now, is yours both video and audio or just audio?
It's not. It's just audio because I've spent so much time in video. I actually needed a break from it. I think I'm going to, drop a little, something in here, but as a female who is, about to be 45 in the fitness industry, so much discussion and attention, and people are like, you don't want to talk about that. We shouldn't talk about that. I'm like, look, I'm empowered, but the work that I teach is not about the shape of the vessel. It's about how well it is. And it's about healing and feeling empowered in it. And I really needed something that wasn't focused visually.
No, that totally makes sense. Now, I think I already know the answer to it, but do you think a lot of folks in the fitness industry that serves as, unfortunately, a bad image in a lot of cases? That's all based, that it's so fickle, or it's only the content's only skin deep.
Yeah, absolutely. This is part of what launched it as well. I mean, I didn't want to go back to a schedule, but I worked in a very high profile industry. And so I was being sent for auditions or just being hired for things. And then they were being, produced gorgeous and wonderful people. But at the very basic, like back in the day of like DVDs, that they would sell you a workout and you have these beautiful bodies, really good coaches. Like I knew a lot of people who were really good at what they did and earnest and honest, but they didn't get that vessel from doing that workout. Number one. Two, no shade and no shame, but a lot of people had work done, like surgical enhancements, alterations, and adjustments. That's not my jam. It's just not for me, but I thought that's unfair. And again, this is in the Wayback Machine before it was so very clear that people knew these things.
Right.
And, and then you have like genetics when it comes to coaching and training. And this is also a conversation that's not had enough. And I graduated from an all-women's college. I am a staunch and proud intersectional feminist. And working in that industry, you want to create empowerment and confidence, and you want to be able to function in your vessel and like do the things you need to do, like carry your goddamn groceries from the car to the house without throwing your back out, pick your kid up, again, without pain. And Pilates is what I'm based in, was created as a rehab program. So it just, again, became an integrity, like layering piece of, I just can't keep doing this because it's not true, and it's like, to my fault, it's really true. Like, I can't pretend, like, I won't lie. I'm definitely okay being the villain in people's story and being like, a little too comfortable, maybe. My people pleasing days are way over. And so, yeah, this transition out, I was like, I just can't do this anymore. I want people to understand like what it takes to work with a vessel, why they are or aren't getting the results that they want. And it's not always their fault. We're a shame-driven culture that wants to keep people in fear and keep them spending money and feeling disempowered. And that's seriously not my jam.
Well, you're unapologetically you. And that's something to be very powerful in, and that more people need to be that. And like, hey, I'm different and everybody's unique. Everybody's got a different body type. Like you said, hereditary. It's not just cookie cutter workout exercise to get the biggest biceps or the biggest butt or the curvest butt or whatever it is. There's a lot that goes into it formula wise as far as workout, and then what you put in your body, what you don't put in your body.
Yeah.
And then also just kind of the makeup of things, and going from there. Now, what has been the biggest surprise since you launched the podcast almost a year ago?
What's been the biggest surprise?
Has it been conversations you had? Has it been people reaching out? Has it been a new client that came from that you didn't expect?
Okay, this is my answer. And it, again, may not feel like it tracks, but it totally tracks. My biggest surprise has actually been the Austin Podcasters group. So when I showed up to that group, so I've done a lot of things in my life and in my career. I've been a part of a lot of communities, but I have always felt like the black sheep in every community, like in the Pilates community, because I've also started as a strength and conditioning coach. So like Pilates tend to be very Pilates people. And I was like too fitness for them. And then when I moved into the fitness industry, the accolades in my place was in Pilates. But then the strength and conditioning, I was like too Pilates for them, and I go into content creators and I'm like too old for most of them. They're like, what? And so, and I'm like super into fashion and clothes. And so it's just like, you're right. I'm authentically me. I don't apologize for it anymore, but I've never felt super connected. And so for podcasting, coming to the group, it's the first time I didn't feel that way. I did feel like everyone is there with their unique voice. I think one of the very first things you said in a meetup was that podcasters are the nicest people you'll meet. That has hands down been my experience. And coming from a fitness industry and a wellness industry, that has not been my experience. And so that has been the most delightful surprise. Like, I love to help people. I love for them to be giddy about like, oh, I can do it this weird way. I didn't think I could do that. Yeah, of course you can. There's no rules. You make the rules, right? And so I finally feel like thus far in the podcast community, we're not that we're all outcasts, but I think you also, referenced us as the bad news bears. And I totally connect with that of like, yes, we are the ragtag group. We are creating conversations and content and sharing. We're filling a space because we have this idea and we have this love. And I think that has been the most delightful surprise in a career for me, of teaching, presenting, in all kinds of places and spaces. It has honestly been the most delightful surprise.
That's really good, and I agree. We can learn something from everybody that's been around.
Yeah.
That's a unique thing, and you're right. A lot of industries, it's not very friendly. It's very cutthroat, or it's very me, not you, or people get upset about that and throw shade. We see that in the real estate industry in a lot of cases. Oh, you're not good. You're just, yeah, that's kind of a funny thing. But I'm glad to hear that, and I'll make sure and send the $100 check in the mail.
Right.
Podcast
For the
Association.
group.
But it is. But that's the great thing is that's part of the reason we started the Austin. Not did start it. We brought it back because we really needed. Austin's too big a community not to have such an active group with so many amazing personalities and amazing people that have such great stories to share, and that's why we're doing these individual videos, interviews with folks to get your story out. Now, let me ask you a question. A little back to nuts and bolts about your podcast. How often do you release a new episode?
Twice a month.
Twice a month. Awesome. And are they you teaching or a mixture of you teaching and guests or just guest interviews?
They're a mixture. I have two formats. So one format is a tarot forecast for that current zodiacal season. So we're getting ready to move into Aries season. That's also the beginning of spring. So it's a full spring forecast of like, what does Aries energy mean? Why would I use this? Why would it be helpful if I understood this? And then I do a tarot reading at the end of the podcast for the community to link into like this particular season, the energy that it's asking us to work with, things to have a heads up. So in those forecasts, yeah, I'm teaching and holding space for sure. The other format is a guest format. But again, pull in my Pilates background, I'm a bit of a control freak. I have 4 questions that I ask of every guest. And so it's not particularly an open dialogue. We definitely chat. It does open up, but I ask 4 questions. 1, what is your magic in the world? 2, what is the current wound, trauma, or shadow that you're currently healing through, knowing that we are all healing through something all the time, whether it's big or little, we're human, there's going to be something. The 3rd question is, what do you consider to be the wound, trauma, or shadow of your lifetime? So the one key element that keeps coming back that sometimes you can feel hamstrung by or weighted down by, but will constantly return for another level, another offering, and another glow up. And the 4th question is, what's coming up in your community right now, and how are you holding space and how are you helping?
Love it. I love it. I love it. I definitely love how they layer on each other there in a variety of ways. Now, you're doing 2 episodes a month. You're coming up on your 1-year anniversary, which is congratulations on stuff like that. How much do you know of your coaching students or your clients? Are they listening to the show, or is it up? And what kind of feedback are you getting from your clients?
It's interesting. It's really supported the community. So we have our membership base, and then we have my magical mentees, and they're all listening. And it's interesting to see how it's grown and it's growing them. It has also definitely, from a business perspective, brought in new clients and mentees to magical mentoring specifically so that they can work with me more closely. So yeah, I just think it's really interesting how it opens them up. I think the 4 and 40, like my intention there is to normalize us talking about wounds and shadows and quit pretending like we don't have them and that it's like this scary thing to talk about. We're just human, right? Like we just are. And let's be comfortable. Let's share this. Let's not pretend, and let's diffuse stuff. So I see that changing them and how they think about themselves. But another great piece is that it's really diverse in who we have on, and very inclusive. And there are definitely voices on the podcast that may not be represented in our membership base. And it's opening them up to understanding some things that I don't think they would have sought out before or would have just come across.
That's good, but that's getting listeners to fresh ideas, fresh perspective, and we have to do that to grow as individuals versus the same old in doctrine teaching. We need to get outside and see what's really going on in a lot of cases, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is the crux of, the title, The Magic Spark. I do believe by listening to voices and stories, and particularly voices and stories you may not seek out on your own, that there is a magic spark that ignites healing expansion in us that you're like, or breakthroughs, like, oh, I literally never understood that before, but all of a sudden it makes sense. Or I've understood that, like my brain gets it, but it wasn't integrated energetically or in the vessel. And like, I'm just hearing it in a whole nother way now. That's the goal of the podcast.
So I got two questions for you. Besides your husband being a contributing factor for you with your membership and getting on a corporate level, was there somebody that you looked to as a hero or a mentor early on in your professional career? And is that changed? And is there a different person now who's a podcaster that you listen to who's helped kind of guide your path?
Yeah, it's interesting that looking back and having thought about this question, I think one of my first heroines that I looked up to actually was Jane Fonda. So my background, and it's funny, I find it amusing now because my background is in theater. I have an acting degree and a dance degree. And so here she is as an actress, but she is absolutely, political and an activist and a staunch feminist and like not afraid to piss people off and has been doing it for years. And so I look back at that and I'm like, oh, and, she was our first fitness VHS. She was our first fitness influencer.
Yeah, very much so.
And so I grew up doing those workouts with my mom and I thought, oh my God, this is how it played out. Interesting, and has it changed? I think it's in flux right now. This has always been a difficult question for me because you look to different people for different things. And I do feel like, I look to women who are strong and not afraid to piss people off and take up space and to do the unique, weird thing. Don't tell me I can't do that. Don't tell me that's not my place. Because guess where I'm going next? I initially, with the transition of the branding to Unicorn Wellness, Louise L. Hayes, she founded Hay House Publishing, and she also has an interesting background as she was a model and became a minister and, a metaphysics teacher, and her book, You Can Heal Your Life. That was my first real entry point into mantras, the connections to ailments in the body. And so again, that was something I was reading along with everything else, like with the clinical, kinesiology. And so I've always been a blend of practical and magical. And I'm sure there's problematic pieces for both of those women, but I feel like women always take the bigger hit of being problematic, that you want to look at, or at least I do, what's the constructive thing that they established and move forward within these really real, systems that aim to cage us out. It's challenging. And so I think both of them have done really interesting and profound things that have legacy. Louise L. Hayes has passed, but her publishing company is here to stay. That's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. Is there a top 3 guests that you would love to have that are on like your dream list to have on your podcast to interview?
I would love to have Liz Plank. She's had a lot of visibility right now, and her book For the Love of Men, I think, is so brilliant. If people have not read it, it's very digestible. It really is, intersectional feminism for the love of it. Feminism gets such a bad rap. There's some real reasons it should too. And yet she really just loves humans. And she is a traditional journalist who's like educated, can document, and then can tell a beautiful story as well. It's not dry. And her heart's just so in it. And then Alok, they are, a non-binary activist who is just unbelievably intelligent and well-spoken, and at their nature, just this unbelievable healer. I aim to hold that space, but I still I align as a witch because I got some judgment and it's a little stabby and pokey, I'm going to have an opinion, and that opinion may not always be helpful. I aim for it to be, but there's still a lot of grit on it. And when they speak, there's no grit. It just sounds like truth. And I think to be in conversation with that would just be such an honor, but also life-changing to be within that frequency.
Awesome stuff. Now, what's on tap for year number 2 of the podcast? Where do you look for that to go? How do you plan on it evolving?
I don't know. Originally, I felt like welcome to the intuitive in me. My original plan was that if I felt the same spark in a year, that I would add video to it, just as that next level to open up audience. I'm hesitant to say that here because then I'm accountable for it. You're going to be like, you're going to do that next week. And so that was originally, it's still on the table loosely, but I'm really in a space of, I always want growth. I would love for there to be more visibility. I would love for more people to be interested in these conversations, these themes, the component of self-care and self-revolution, right? But I'm also in a place in life where I don't want to push too hard. I don't need to break it. I have pushed and grown a business for 10 years. It takes energy, and I'm in a real space of understanding what's sustainable. So part of that answer is like, nothing's going to be different. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. Just keep showing up.
Yeah, but that's the part of it. One day at a time, 1 week at a time, 1 month at a time. And that's actually, might be, I don't know if it's in you, but that's the aspect of getting healthy. You got to take it one day at a time, one workout at a time. A little bit is better than nothing. In the fitness tank, as my trainer used to tell me all the time, 10 minutes is better than nothing. 30 minutes is better than 10 minutes. But if you can't get an hour, get something in a little bit of fashion. If you can't get it, eat healthy. You know what I mean?
So true. And that is the basis of everything I teach, the tiny and the mighty. And my community always laughs because I always say, actually, half-assed is better than no ass. Like, we have a very perfectionist culture, and perfectionism keeps us from even trying. And so you can't get anywhere. You do have to fail. You do have to fuck it up. You do have to be like, shit, I went to the gym today with my family. I was like, I'm here. This is not on task, but I did 15 minutes of cardio. I lifted some heavy things, did some mobility. So I am actually, if I'm the queen of anything, it's the consistency and the tiny and the mighty and the showing up. And so I just want to keep showing up for this. My psychic intuitive pieces of myself, I always trust that when there's a next that needs to come, I'm going to know. And I've really pulled back from my Taurus sun that's like, but I said I was going to do this, hell or high water. I'm going to be sick and cranky and angry and it's still going to get done. So I don't play like that anymore. I try not to.
Very nice. Now, you talked about the different things. I'm going to come back to something in just a second here, but I wanted to make sure and ask this. With your services you're offering, your membership, can you give us a range of kind of what your low price point to your higher price ticket money, kind of the mixture, just so that those are listening that are thinking about doing something like that? What's kind of your mixture of product?
Absolutely. The online studio is the entry point, and it's, ranges from $22 a month to $32 a month, depending honestly only in how you pay for it. It's all the same offering. And so you have 8 30-minute mat-based workouts every single month there. You have 2 30-minute mobility and flexibility videos every single month. You have a 20-minute guided meditation that's also a Reiki healing. There's a new moon and a full moon tarot reading every single month. And in the library, there's so much that's built out that's just accessible in astrology tutorials and magic tutorials. We have a recommended reading bookshelf. Like my 41-day food reset is there. There's over 300 gluten and dairy-free recipes. It's really a one-stop shop for your wellness, that if you like me and you trust me, then you'll come in with what works for you. And then when you're ready to take on the other pieces and layer them on, they're already there. So there's no upsell to any of those. Like, it's your membership to the studio and you have access to all of it. And that's what started 10 years ago, we've never changed the price. We've only added more content and more value.
Very nice.
Yeah. And then I have 2 signature courses. You do not have to be a member to engage in those. One is called Witches Work, and the other one is Healing Protocols. These are both movement practices. The Healing Protocols is like, I think everybody should own this for any injury, issue, chronic thing. As we mature and you're like, what is this weird thing that hurts now in my wrist or my elbow this week? There is a protocol that honestly will make any of them better. And whether it, heals it or not, but I'm big in injury healing. That's so much of my background. Witches Work is for those who are really witchy woo woo, tarot curious, but are trying to really connect and embody their vessel in order to amplify their frequency, in order to manifest. So it's on the wooier side. And then the healing, protocols are on the very practical side of things. I have group magical mentoring. And in fact, we just launched last week, and one-on-one magical mentoring. And these are the higher ticket items. One-on-one magical mentoring, I only take on 7 clients. There is a wait list, and we really wait until one of the mentees steps out or we decide that they're finished with their work. So it's kind of like, people just wait for a chair to open, which is really cool. But I've had clients for years now that they're like, nope, I can't do life without this. So here's where I am. My group magical mentoring was created in response to that. Like, how can we start this work? How can we begin this exploration, or mentees who have stepped out of one-on-one but want a check-in point but don't need the heavy like eyeball to eyeball contact with me all the time. And so, yeah, we just launched last week. I do a spring session and a fall session, and it's full. It's been the most prosperous year yet that we've done this, and so it's just really exciting. It's based in the goddesses. So like spring is Aphrodite and Mary Magdalene, and in the fall, the dark goddesses, Lilith and Hecate. And one of my favorite things is no, you don't have to be wooey or in the know to participate in these things. It's very energetic. If it resonates with you, like, you are welcome. But we always do a phone call to vet, because it isn't always a fit for everyone.
Sure.
It's not like any other program. That is for sure.
That's awesome. Love it, love it, love it. Love the different mixed offerings that you're able to touch base with, and the fact that it's not just open to anybody is a good thing too. Because sometimes that's sometimes it's for our inner health or our inner being, not to deal with folks that don't really need to be around. What counsel would you give to somebody who's thinking about starting a podcast or a new podcaster? What bit of advice would you give them?
This is like the practical coach and mentor in me, is to create a calendar. And I know that sounds really, really basic. I think people are in tune lately to their authentic voice or the story they want to tell or the types of conversations they want to have. But I think the trip up that I notice most with people is that they don't have a functional plan. When are you going to do it? How is this going to fit in your life? Right. And that's just a trainer in me. And I love the keep it simple, stupid. Like, it's really, I think people overcomplicate things to the high heavens. They're trying to, produce way too much content. They have no idea what it means in their own life flow to create a certain amount of content. So I think what I hear people, lately is they're going to do a weekly podcast, but they don't have the stamina for it. They haven't built up to it. And they don't understand how there will be tech issues, there will be editing issues, there will be scheduling issues. Like, plan for it. So start with way less episodes than you think. Like, I think with any goal, like, yes, the big fat hairy goal needs to be on the board. But if you're starting and launching, you need to cut it in half, get really good at it for 3 to 6 months, and then layer in the next step. Because you can always add more content. It's harder to take it away because you'll have an emotional attachment to it, or your audience will. So sustainability in your energy is number one on my list.
I love it. I totally agree that you have a lot of people that have good intentions, but they don't set themselves up for success by making it a repeatable habit.
Yeah.
Showing up to themselves on a regular basis. And many people wait till, oh, I'll have time, or I've got the energy, I'll do it in the weekend or after hours. And they come home from their job or career and they're just exhausted. Or they keep procrastinating and then they beat themselves up that they didn't get it done. Kind of like going to the gym, you know?
Exactly. This is why when people are like, I don't understand how you do all these things. I'm like, because how you train in the gym is honestly how you succeed in anything.
That sounds like the old football coach to me. How you practice is how you play.
It's true. It's entirely true. Exactly. So, and I feel like people don't practice enough.
Yeah.
And you've said it before too. And again, I really appreciate, now it makes more sense that you're a football coach, because yes, like you have to have your eye on the long game. You're not going to run out there and get injured, because then you've got no career, no season, you know? So like, yeah, we need to be brave. I actually think people are a little too willy-nilly lately and without enough preparation and practice, because there are so many voices and are so many content creators. Everybody can do it. I'm going to say something that's probably an unpopular opinion. It doesn't make everybody good at it.
Yeah. Amen to that. Yeah. And that's the biggest thing. I think that you see that you look at the numbers, the amount of shows that are out there, but the ones that have released content in the last 90 days is a small fraction of the total ones that have released more than 20 episodes or have released something in the last 90 days is a much smaller amount. And that's the thing, is if you get started, stick with it. I totally believe you don't have to do a daily podcast. Doing once a week or twice a month is being consistent. You can always add bonus, but once you start taking stuff away, it takes away from the message.
Yeah. You can always add and layer in, but again, it goes down to what's the goal? How are you going to get there? How do you make sure you maintain for the long game rather than just the short term? Because we do. I'm just reiterating and reflecting. You just see people really burn out. But because at Earnest and at the basic level of what I teach self-care, which is really just adulting, and you have to have a plan and you have to be honest about where you're not good at something, you haven't gotten good yet, or you just don't have a consistency to it. If it's, that not having a plan is a plan to fail.
Yeah, but half-ass is better than no ass, as I like.
It really is. I mean, on the other, the authenticity spectrum of things, again, I also come in contact with people who are like perfecting things to this insane amount. And I'm like, just go do it.
Yeah.
Right. I think to the perfectionists that I come in contact with, because they put so much attention to it and they haven't done it yet, it's going to be sustainable because they care so much, so that's to circle back, cut, the amount that you think you should be producing or that you even want to, get really good at something that feels like less. And then you can always add. I always tell my kids, if you can't do the basics, you can't do the extras.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point there. So this has been awesome, Danny, but I know you got a busy schedule ahead of you too there. What's the best way for those that are watching us or listening to this to connect with you? Is the website, podcast? What do you prefer?
If you head to unicornwellnessstudio.com, you will find everything there. And if you're so inclined, I'm usually on Instagram. It's Tandy_Gutierrez.
That's awesome. And we'll make sure and put all that stuff in the description below there for you. This has been awesome, Tandy. Thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your story.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a delight.
Definitely so. We'll see you at the next meetup.